안녕하세요. 중앙대학교 김기영 교수입니다. 오늘 제가 소개할 분은 캐나다에서 2001년부터 비영리 단체를 돕고 있는 소프트웨어 기업인 베러 임팩트 창업자이며 CEO인 토니 구드로우입니다. 포럼을 위해 주제를 찾던 중 IAB 웨비나를 보게 되었고 주요 발표자인 토니에게 포럼 영상을 소개해도 된다는 허락을 받았습니다. IAB 웨비나에서 토니 구드로우와 함께한 전문가들과 백경미 이사에게 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 소개할 주제는 디지털 시대에서의 자원봉사와 신규 기술로 인한 자원봉사의 힘의 확장인데요. 이 주제는 현 시점의 세태와 아주 밀접하게 맞닿아 있습니다. 사례 연구와 함께 어떻게 현재 그리고 앞으로 발명될 기술들이 봉사의 개념을 확장시키는지와 인공지능의 예시를 통해서 그것이 향하고 있는 방향을 설명할 것입니다. 토니의 발표를 5가지로 나눠보면 첫째, 인공지능 기술로 디자인된 파로 물범이 퇴행성 뇌질환 환자들에게 어떻게 위안을 주는지의 사례입니다. 이 사례는 로봇공학과 인공지능의 빙산의 일각점으로 보여집니다. 둘째, 로봇 소방관들이 2019년 파리의 노틀담에서 있었던 화재를 진압하는 데 역할을 하기도 했고, 호주에서는 드론이 수영장의 자원봉사 구조원들과 함께 수영 중에 위험에 처한 사람에게 인명 구조 튜브를 전달하는 역할을 하고 있습니다. 새로운 기술들은 자원봉사의 주요 역할과 동일한 책임을 수행하고 있습니다. 셋째, 아직은 자율주행 자동차가 우리 도로에서 상용화되고 있지는 않지만 머지않아 의료진에게 의료 환자나 노인을 운송하는 구급 봉사자가 더 적게 필요한 때가 올 것입니다. 넷째, 대화의 측면에서 컴퓨터들은 우리와 자연스러운 대화를 할 수 있는 수준으로 계속적으로 가까워져 가고 있고, 또 사실 그 이상의 것들도 가능하게 되고 있습니다. AI가 미용실 예약을 하는 것은 튜어링 테스트의 일종인데요. 기계인 것이 상대방에게 발각되지 않고 인간과 대화할 수 있다면 AI가 인간의 지능을 구현할 능력을 입증받은 것입니다. 다섯째, 기술의 발전으로 인하여 많은 것들을 시도할 수는 있습니다. 그러나 많은 기술이 자원봉사자들을 대체하고 역할을 대신함으로써 달성된 결과는 더 커질 수는 있지만 기술 발달로 인한 자원봉사의 기회가 줄어들 수도 있다고 이야기합니다. 이 부분을 설명하며 토니는 구글 자율자동차 테스트를 돕는 시각장애인 스티브 맨의 이야기로 마칩니다. 다른 운전자와 협의하지 않고 내가 가야 할 곳을 혼자 차를 타고 갈 수 있게 되면서 나는 다시 정상적인 사람이 될 수 있었다 라고 끝을 맺습니다. 다음으로 우리나라의 사례를 말씀드리겠습니다. 한국은 디지털 뉴딜 정책이 4차 산업혁명 시대의 미래 산업을 이끌어갈 핵심 키워드로 중요성이 확대되고 있습니다. 우리나라의 사회복지와 자원봉사 영역에서 디지털 융합 서비스 사례는 4가지로 다음과 같습니다. 첫 번째, 국내에서는 복지와 ICT를 융합한 정책 분야로는 모바일 위험 감지, 긴급 구조, 위치 확인, 헬스케어, 웰니스 서비스 등이 시행되고 있습니다. IoT 기술로는 독거노인 지킴이를 진행하고 있으며 복지와 자원봉사에 디지털을 적용할 가능성이 점점 커지고 있습니다. 두 번째, 스마트 케어는 의료와 ICT 기술의 융합으로 환자에게 의료 정보를 제공하는 서비스에 최첨단 AI 로봇을 활용하여 발달 장애 아동을 돌보는 스마트 케어 서비스가 있습니다. 세 번째, 독거노인 응급안전 돌보미 서비스는 ICT 기술로 돌봄 기본 서비스와 연계하여 노인에 대한 종합적인 사회 안전망을 구축하고 있습니다. 네 번째, 노인과 중증장애인 응급안전 알림 서비스는 독거노인과 중증장애인의 가정에 응급상황 발생 시 신속하게 대처하거나 소방서에 신고할 수 있는 시스템을 구축하고 있습니다. 결론적으로 2가지로 요약할 수 있겠습니다. 먼저, 내 자녀가 외국에 살더라도 트윈 개념의 AI를 내 자녀의 아바타로 만들어서 복지 부분이나 자원봉사에 활용할 수 있는 날이 다가오고 있습니다. 이와 같이 포스트 코로나 시대에는 디지털과의 융합이 필수이고 더 활발해질 전망입니다. 그러나 기술 발달도 중요하지만 자원봉사자들의 아날로그적인 감성, 기술보다 더 중요한 나누는 인간적인 마음인 휴먼 서비스를 활용한 복지와 자원봉사로 미래의 복지로 나가야 할 것이라고 봅니다. 끝으로 디지털 산업을 리딩하고 있는 한국, 일본, 중국 등은 디지털 선도국으로서 디지털을 융합한 글로벌 자원봉사에 앞으로 협력하여 세계 자원봉사와 사회복지에 기여할 모델을 만들어 가리라 기대하고 소망합니다. 그럼 토니 구드로이 영상을 함께 시청하시겠습니다.
Is the founder and CEO of Better Impact, a software company that's been helping the nonprofit and governmental sector in over 20 countries since 2001. He's spoken at volunteer sector conferences on 5 continents, including IAVE conferences in Europe, Asia, and Latin America, focusing on topics such as technology trends in the volunteering sector and new perspectives in data collection. He brings to this panel discussion combined insights into present and future technology offerings and the operations of volunteer engaging organizations.
COVID-19 has suspended the whole notion of traveling abroad, including as it relates to international volunteering, with video calls replacing face-to-face meetings and conferences like IAVE's being postponed and somewhat pushed online like today. The need for an investment in communications technology has certainly grown. We have to recognize that this adds yet another reason we need to ramp up efforts to diminish the digital divide between the richer and the poorer regions. This is because aside from all the human suffering that's being caused, of course, not all of the effects of the pandemic are bad ones, especially when combined with some newer technologies. As we've all been forced to adopt new ways of communicating, some are showing promise to augment or even demonstrate advantages over our current processes that might be very well with us for the long haul, long after the pandemic is behind us. At the next IAVE conference, when we are able to get together in person, I would not be surprised if there are some who are able to participate in the conference without traveling, and only because of the new virtual elements that spill over from our experience this year. For some who simply cannot travel internationally and don't have the funds to do so, they may be able to take place and when they otherwise couldn't have. Although the cultural exchange that occurs through international volunteerism is not the same with virtual volunteering, when it replaces a person being there in person, the virtual environment will enlarge the talent pool to include those who can't take the time to travel. As the executive director of the Rwanda Volunteer Network, Archimede Sekamana shared with us, if they need, say, 10 volunteers, they could use 2 on the ground and 8 working virtually. And this may prove to be a great approach, one that combines local talent and perspectives with other talents and perspectives from a broader population that may not have been included pre-pandemic when international volunteering typically had to include travel. The Perro seal is a robot modeled after a Canadian baby harp seal. It makes soft sounds and moves its fins when petted and yelps when handled roughly or held upside down. It blinks when the lights go up and it opens its eyes at loud noises. Microprocessors under its artificial soft white fur adjust its behavior based on dozens of hidden sensors that monitor sound and light and temperature and touch. It perks up at the sound of its name or praise, and over time, the words that it hears frequently. And because it does all of this wrapped up in a soft artificial fur, it's been proven to reduce wandering, loneliness, agitation, and depression, primarily with people suffering from dementia. But its benefits extend beyond the patient to caregivers as well, whether they are family, a professional healthcare worker, or a volunteer. In speaking with practitioners in the field, it was reported that Pero's calming effect makes the volunteer's job easier. It benefited patients when volunteers were not able to provide emotional support. And sometimes it could even get a positive response from some residents when volunteers or staff were not able to do so. The Pero seal was selected as a case study for 3 reasons. In some cases, it is actually fulfilling the very same role as the primary role in some volunteer positions. In other cases, it is providing an augmentation of the efforts of volunteers who simply now have another tool that they can use. And thirdly, it represents what I call the tip of the iceberg in robotics and artificial intelligence that can be applied in the volunteering sector. A simple search for robot caregivers or robot companions on the internet will give you plenty of examples of work going on in this area. Some of these products have died without getting much traction, but others are gaining significant momentum. And beyond comparisons, or rather companions with caregiving assistants and robotic firefighters are already in use. There's a robotic firefighter that was used in fighting the fire at Notre Dame in Paris in 2019. Drones are being used alongside volunteer lifeguards in Australia to safely deliver life-saving flotation devices to swimmers in peril. And while self-driving cars are not ready for mass use on our roads yet, it seems likely to only be a matter of time when there will be less need for volunteers to drive medical patients or the elderly to their doctor's appointments. When I reviewed the Pero seal case story, I mentioned that it represented a tip of the iceberg. Well, imagine what a future version of Pero might be if it were able to look like a human and converse like a human. What if it could detect small but important changes in mental or physical states while conversing? After the webinar, I encourage you to search robots that look like humans. If you haven't done so lately, you'll be surprised. On the conversational side of things, computers keep getting closer and closer to being able to carry on a conversation with us, and indeed, much more. There's a test known as the Turing test after the man who developed it. And it's a deceptively simple method of determining whether a machine can demonstrate human intelligence. If a machine can engage in a conversation with a human without being detected as being a machine, it has passed the Turing test and it has demonstrated human intelligence. Take a listen to this telephone call and decide for yourself. Who is the AI? Is it the person placing the call, the person answering the call, both, or neither? Go ahead.
So how can I help you?
Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd.
Sure, give me 1 second. What time are you looking for around?
At 12 p.m.
We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15.
Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for?
Just a woman's haircut for now.
Okay, we have a 10 o'clock.
10 a.m. is fine.
Okay, what's her first name?
The first name is Lisa.
Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Great. Have a great day. Bye.
Some of you would certainly have picked her out correctly. A number of you likely did not. And it is in the inability for the group to all answer correctly that this example demonstrates the Turing test at work and just how close we are getting. You can hear this phone call again after this presentation or whenever you like by searching by anything such as Google makes a hair appointment. It'll come up. If you do, I encourage you to not only listen to the first call, but also the second one they demonstrate, where the AI calls a restaurant to make a dinner reservation. The person at the restaurant mistakenly interprets the number of people in the requested reservation for the time being requested. But the AI responds appropriately and the conversation stays on track. So as we get to the point where we can deploy a new technology in our volunteer engaging organizations, we need to persistently ask the question, should we? Robocallers placing phone calls looking for support might damage an organized reputation to a greater degree than the money the campaign raises. Self-driving cars, rather than volunteers taking patients to their doctor's appointment, might be criticized for missing the opportunity for a friendly visit from the volunteer. I believe that we should only adopt a new technology where it adds a greater value, however that's measured, but greater than by any other means. I also believe that we should only engage a volunteer where the added value created is greater than by any other means. We need to look carefully at this. How can we deploy current and future technologies or not deploy them to better our world? In some cases, the results of volunteer efforts will become greater by teaming up with new technologies. In other cases, the results achieved will become greater by having technology replace the volunteer and fill the role once filled by a volunteer. And hopefully, in more and more cases over time, technology will simply make the need for what a volunteer once did no longer needed. This last point is summed up well by a story of Steve Mann, who is legally blind and has been helping Google test its self-driving cars, actually getting to use the car to get around without anyone else in the car with him. In his words, and I quote, "Going where I need to go in a vehicle without having to make arrangements with other drivers, it just let me be a whole person again." I might throw in that robotics and driverless cars is perhaps not surprising because it's hard to imagine some of the things that we talk about when we think about a car driving all by itself or a robot walking into a building unassisted. But Bill Gates said something that I think matters here. We overestimate the changes that technology will bring in the next 2 years by a long shot. And we underestimate what technology will change and bring to us in the next 10 years by a long shot. That's not a word for word quote, but it's the gist of it. And I think that I think it's just our exposure to these things leaves this as such a low percentage. But let's ask this question again, perhaps at the IIV conference in the fall of 2021. And with a few more driverless cars on the road, let's see if that percentage changes. Yeah, and it's what I've seen is a growth in the number of online training and learning platforms. Some are even built into volunteer management software, but it's one of those things that I think will benefit the whole sector long after the pandemic, is that out of necessity, we've come to need to train our volunteers online. It's become more structured in that process. And I think in that structure, now that the content is being created, that it will be reused and repurposed long after the pandemic, and our volunteers will be more prepared to do the roles that we choose for them.
잘 시청하셨습니까? 포스트 코로나 시대에서는 AI 등 디지털 융합이 필수적이며 이는 자원봉사의 역할이 축소되는 것을 보완하게 해줄 것입니다. 디지털 융합이 가족과 봉사자에게 위안이 되고 노인과 소외계층의 디지털 격차를 줄이기 위해 지속적인 교육과 투자의 확대가 필요할 것입니다. 이번 포럼에서 토니 구드로와 직접 토론하지 못하고 영상으로 소개하게 되어서 아쉽습니다. 다음 포럼에서는 토니와 전문가들과 함께 만나서 글로벌적인 선한 영향력을 함께 느끼게 되기를 기대합니다. 감사합니다.